one of the hardest parts is about the fact that, we can design something on paper and make it beautiful and even 3D print something that looks gorgeous, but to then make it, thousands of times over again perfectly every time with good quality design, and made in a way that is durable, that is attractive, that is repeatable. That's the magic sauce in manufacturing something, is figuring out those pieces.
We help people with ideas get them to revenue.
Hey everyone, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Norm. We're host and idea consultants at 52 Launch, a company that turns your product idea into a company.
On today's episode, we're joined here with Sander, our expert and head of production with all things manufacturing at 52 Launch, talking to you about what that process really looks like.
So for those who are just starting to watch our channel, 52 Launch is a company that turns a product idea into a revenue-generating business through design, manufacturing, branding, and marketing. Sander is our head of manufacturing. It's a pleasure to have you. And we're going to dive in here, asking you some questions just about the process.
All right, Sander, so just to kind of kick things off, what exactly is manufacturing?
Manufacturing is where a product is mass-produced at a facility that can make the product we've designed.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So kind of taking that one step further, what exactly does manufacturing mean in today's world?
So again, it depends on the product, but most products, we would design it and then we would send it to a factory to have it manufactured, which means we would figure out the tooling, figure out all the processes that are needed to put it together, do all the quality inspection points, and produce it in mass, and have thousands of them be all the same.
Yeah.
And why is this an important process in actually creating the product as a whole?
Well, it's one of the hardest parts is about the fact that, we can design something on paper and make it beautiful and even 3D print something that looks gorgeous, but to then make it, thousands of times over again perfectly every time with good quality design, and made in a way that is durable, that is attractive, that is repeatable. That's the magic sauce in manufacturing something, is figuring out those pieces.
And talk about how long it really takes to bring a product to market. Because I know when we talk to people for the first time, they don't really have a good understanding of the process of it. Because there's a lot of things that go into bringing a product to market and actually manufacturing it the right way the first time.
Yeah, I would say that from concept to the warehouse in the United States, you're looking at 12 to 18 months total, depending on the complexity of the product. Some are a little simpler, some are a lot harder, but it's 12 to 18 months is about the right amount of time from idea to warehouse.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Kind of expanding on that, why exactly is kind of that DFM process important when you're bringing a product to market?
So DFM, design for manufacturing, is what we do. So, a lot of design firms can draw you a pretty picture and make something that looks great. But where 52 really specializes in that we're not just building you a pretty picture. What we're building you is a product that can be manufactured. We take into account, strength of materials, the processes that reduce the amount of labor that goes into the product so that it is more affordable to make, that it is easier to make, it is faster to make, and then right down to the packaging, like how is it going to be packaged so that it goes from the factory, arrives in our facility, and then goes from our facility to the customer's door and arrives safely. And so even all those little parts and pieces that go into it, from the first time we talk to the factory about the mold or the circuit board or whatever it is that we're making, all the way to when the tape goes on that final box. That's all part of sort of what we design. It goes into the DFM, design for manufacturing.
Right. Yeah.
And what is something that people misunderstand or they don't know about that process as a whole?
I'd say the thing that most people don't understand is how long it takes, because there are a ton of details. Yes, it seems like it's pretty straightforward to make one, and yes, it probably is pretty straightforward to make one. But to then, have a group of people at a factory, a lot of times a factory that doesn't speak the same language I speak, be able to then make that, set up each station so that it is making it, doing their job correctly all the time, has been trained to do that job over and over again. Same thing with the injection molds for making a plastic part. An injection mold, is the pressure right? Is the volume of the plastic right? Is the cycle time right? Is it cooling properly? Do I need cooling fixtures afterwards to make sure that the part is going to be perfect every time? So that stuff all takes time. Sometimes I get lucky and it happens without too much trouble. Sometimes it takes a lot of back and forth with the factory to get all those pieces working properly and get all the processes in place to be able to make a high quality product over and over again.
And you mentioned injection molding, right? Can you kind of walk people through what exactly that is for the viewers that just have no idea what injection molding is?
So injection molding is pretty much any plastic product that you have in your house or wherever is injection molded, and that is where you take a metal mold, generally steel mold, that has a negative cavity inside of it. So you'd have I'm trying to think, like a Jello mold. So a Jello mold is 1/2 of what an injection mold would look like. So it has a shape. You pour the liquid in. That liquid turns solid inside there. Then you open it up, and now you've got this 3D shaped part. So manufacturing, so an injection molding process is very much like a Jello mold, just really hot and really big. I mean, a general injection mold for making something small, like something this big, is probably 10 times that size in terms of a steel part. So it's this giant thing that needs to be moved around a building in a crane. That's how heavy it is.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
and I
so
think
it's
that's
like
something that
yeah.
the two of us deal on a regular basis.
Yeah,
When we
yeah.
have people that come and walk through the door, or we're having conversations with them, it's definitely a question that everybody has. Is what is the tooling going to cost me? What is the injection mold going to cost me? And the question is we really don't know until the product's designed, and we have a very, very good understanding for what the product is going to cost.
Yeah, kind of building on that point, Norm, the tooling. A lot of people are. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Sander, on what are what makes a project flexible to work around tooling, and what makes it, like, if you hear a product idea, what makes it an absolute no-go? Like, no, you're 100% going to need tooling. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, it depends on the kind of product. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain things you can do with flat where you can do die cutting, and that's more affordable. Die cut tools, or even stamping tools for like a 3D metal part. So that comes a lot in the sort of design process, even before we get to DFM. It's talking to the inventor about, here's your idea, and here's how you want your product to function, or how you want your product to look, or both. And here are several ways we can attack that, and that can be, here's the most affordable in terms of capital for tooling.
Yep.
And here is the most expensive for tooling. And usually that relationship has an inverse relationship of part cost. So if it's cheaper on tooling, it usually means there's a little more labor in it, and it's a little harder to put together. But if you spend more on the tooling, there's more of the tooling doing the work and less humans doing the work. So therefore, it ends up being a lower part price. So it's like a back and forth with the clients a lot of times, with with estimates at the beginning, and then as we get closer to finalizing the design, more solid quotes. But we can certainly guide our inventors in a bunch of different ways, sort of depending on what their desired outcome is in terms of part price versus tooling price. And again, part of that too is, how does it look? So it's like, it looks obviously very different depending on how you manufacture something. And so if it's a stamped metal part versus an injection molded part, those two have very different durabilities. Those two have very different weights. Those two have very different. But I could probably make two parts that function the same way with those two different things. And it all comes down to what the client's preferences are.
100%. Yeah. So would you say, in regards to the tooling, you want to go higher end, more tooling, less human involvement? Does that necessarily mean it's going to be like, this is going to be a very, very high quality product, or can I still get a high quality product with some humans making my product?
Yeah, I would say quality doesn't really enter into whether or not I use an injection mold or a stamping mold or anything else. Quality isn't really, either way you're going to get a high quality part. It's more about upfront capital to make tooling versus part price. And so the more labor I can take out, the lower price it is. And then if we're making something in the United States, obviously the labor is many multiples of what it might be in Asian countries. And so therefore, it's even more critical, if anything, that I'm making in the United States, that I get as much labor content out of that as possible, to be able to even have that conversation with somebody. And in the end, it still is probably cheaper to make it in Asia, but to even attempt that, you have to really figure out how to get the labor content out of it.
And we've talked about the discussion where you're having with the entrepreneur, in the direction that you'll point them in. As far as your mentorship, working with these entrepreneurs, tell me, what does that look like? How much have you really gained, just from your day to day, through talking to these different entrepreneurs? And because obviously, from our experience of turning them over to you, they're very, very different from how they start in the beginning to where they end. So talk to me about how your experience is working with these entrepreneurs through guiding them, because none of these people have really done this before, which we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's one of the best parts of the job is working with somebody, and they've got this great idea. They're trying to figure out how to make it, and I'm working closely with them, trying to figure out how to make their dream happen in a way that is both affordable and repeatable and long-term, so that it's like, not only is it going to work now, it'll last for years, or I need to be able to order that next year again and be able to make the same exact thing again next year. And so working with the inventors to figure out their goals and figure out how best to make it to meet those goals, is one of the great parts of the job.
Totally, and at the same time, it's difficult, right? Because each person is different, and each goal is different, right? There's people that have done this for many, many years, and then there's also on the other side of the coin, people that are doing it for the first time. Which is obviously, some people need more guidance than others. But I'd love to kind of dive into tariffs, Aaron, if you want to cover that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kind of talk about the other side of the spectrum here. You mentioned tariffs before, but among that, what are some other challenges that you're kind of seeing right now in the industry?
Well, freight is one of those ones, like just getting it from the factories in the Far East to the United States is always, a headache. It's like, and sometimes the headache's different than others. It's like one year it's the Panama Canal, could only let one boat through at a time because there wasn't enough water. And so now I've got, delays on shipping. And boats are even taking the route of going around the bottom of South America to avoid it, giving me weeks of ocean time that I didn't plan on. Or a harbor strike. The harbor strike in Long Beach, was months of time where boats are sitting out there and I couldn't get things off of containers. Right now it's duties, and then the on again, off again nature of the duties right now. So it goes from nobody shipping anything to everybody wanting to ship everything. And so you go from plenty of capacity, really low prices, to no capacity, really high prices at the flick of a switch. And so to keep all those things in line and trying to navigate that in a way that, again, delivers it to our door most affordably, that's the key. So.
That is the key, 100%. So would you say the world of freight has been very volatile or fast-moving?
Yes, very turbulent.
Very turbulent.
Very turbulent, especially since in this year it's been more turbulent than usual.
Based off political factors and other things like that.
Yeah, but every year is somewhat turbulent.
Yeah.
But this year is particularly turbulent.
Yeah, that's what I...
And you're the one seeing all of this, right? I mean, the entrepreneur that's on the other side of this, right, is not really seeing all of this, happen real time, right? I just want to get a good understanding for what do you think entrepreneurs get wrong, right, throughout this process, right? If you give, our viewers, some piece of advice, what do you see the most commonality with entrepreneurs just getting wrong in the day to day?
Well, I mean, there's this saying that's old and kind of boring, but you can have quality, speed, or price, and so you can only pick two. So therefore, and with the freight situation, that's one where I could avoid it. I go from China to Long Beach, take a train or a truck from Long Beach to Boston, and yes, that is probably 3 weeks faster, but it's also thousands of dollars more.
Right.
So that's one. There's a simple one where it's speed versus cost. You know, and so that's an easy one to do, and we avoid the Panama Canal nonsense and everything else. And so, so again, there's things you can do, but there's those kind of decisions throughout the process. So it's like whether it's about the injection mold and exactly the steel that we use, which again, I don't even usually get into that with the customers, but like I'll choose like, okay, this guy's going to make hundreds of thousands of these, so let's make this tool, make sure this tool will last forever, no matter how many they want to make. or this is a lower volume item and it's a high quality, it's a high priced item and it's going to be a lower volume item. So, the steel, we can do a different kind of steel that, yes, the parts don't matter one way or the other, but the steel price would change based on those kinds of decisions. So there's lots of those kinds of decisions that go on throughout the process that have to be made collaboratively with the entrepreneur as we go through.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing to see kind of like through this process, people really have their eyes open how many variables there really are. So kind of on the other side of that equation, right? What advice would you have for somebody who is just thinking of something from scratch? Truly the back of the napkin, drawing something out in order to get that to reality. What's your advice on that?
I mean, I think the biggest piece of advice is to get to reality faster. I'd say that there's lots of lawyers that would say, go ahead and do the patent. I personally have over 20 patents. I would think that 2 or 3 of them were worth the money that we paid. So it's just like, I feel like a lot of times people feel like the patents are necessary and been told that over and over and over again, that patents are what you need to get to protect yourself, or somebody's going to knock you off and everything else. You're never going to get knocked off if you don't get it into the market.
Yeah,
and,
100%.
And even if you did launch it and you didn't have a patent and somebody knocked you off, if you were first in the market and you do a great job branding, which we're going to help with, that trademark and that branding and that marketing that went into that product is way more valuable than that patent will be, because if you did find somebody who was knocking you off and you had a patent that you just spent $25,000, $30,000 to get, now you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend your patent with no guarantees you're going to win in the end. So the thing is that you're going to spend these giant numbers to defend this patent, and in the end, you've got nothing. Whereas with the brand, you're building something. You're building the brand. You're the first to market. You are, building a market. You're building a following. That part, nobody can take that away from you.
Yeah.
And then, frankly, anybody who's knocking you off, especially a low-cost supplier from someplace else that's knocking you off, they're definitely not going to have that stuff. And so, I came from a company that made a sporting product, and the knockoffs were everywhere. But But the sporting goods stores wanted our stuff because it was a brand name thing, and the consumers wanted our stuff because it was a brand name thing. It was identical to the other products on the market, but the thing was that it didn't matter that it was identical because it didn't have the brand name on it.
Oh yeah, and competition is great, right? But dominance is better. And
Absolutely.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yep. And first in too. I think first in is critical when it comes to a lot of these inventors.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And as the copycats, you're always starting behind the 8 ball.
True.
Too. So I very, very well said. And I definitely agree.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate your time, Sander. It's a pleasure having you. And we'll keep on bringing great entrepreneurs and sending them your way.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thank you.
Of course.
We hope you enjoyed watching this podcast as much as we enjoyed filming it. If you want to learn more about 52 Launch, click these videos here. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pitch to Product podcast. And if you have a product idea, head to the show notes, click the link to 52launch.com, and book a free consultation with us.